Alright, welcome back guys. We're here for the second part of the Honour and Profit run-through. Speaking of running, we're looking at runners. First up, we've got the IDs. Ian Sterling.
Yeah, so Ian Sterling is the first identity we're going to look at. It's a 45-10, so 45 deck size, 10 influence, and 1 base blink, which is always a good sign. And the ability is quite unique. It's something we haven't seen before. And it says, when your turn begins, you gain 2 credits if the corp has scored more agenda points than you have. So it really leads Criminal into a new direction.
Yeah, definitely. It punishes Wayland or any other deck that's trying to score out early agendas, particularly Wayland. They always want that hostile takeover. You're ticking up for 2, and you play a couple of slower type of decks. What do you think of it?
Yeah, my favourite runner deck that I play most of the time is a Kate R&D lock deck that tries to set up a full rig, get into R&D and get most of the agendas on one turn. Obviously you like to score early agenda points if you can, but that's not always the case. I think if that sort of deck is playing against an NBN deck, which seems pretty dominant in the meta right now, that's steadily scoring agendas throughout the game, if you can, from sort of the early to mid game, be gaining 2 credits a turn from your identity, that's a pretty great rate of return, and it's really going to help you set up for that late game attack.
Cool. So look, he's definitely not maybe a meta defining card, but he's certainly someone to build around. You know, people are going to enjoy it, like Professor. You know, not the most powerful, but he's fun to build around.
Yeah, it's definitely not going to replace Gabe or Andromeda in the seats of power, but it definitely is a new option for Criminal.
And I think the one sort of side synergy is with Data Dealer. You can steal their agendas, forfeit them, so you're staying behind, you're getting the 9 credits from the Data Dealer, I think it is 9.
There's 9 credits.
Plus the 2 every turn from Ian, which is going to help to make it easier to get in and steal the rest of them. So if you can get that snowball effect happening and deck the corp, get rid of all those agendas that way, that's a strategy. Whether it's viable or not, I don't know. Yeah.
Alright, next up we've got another identity. We have Ken Express Tenma, the disappeared clone. So he's 45 min deck size, 17 influence, so a bit higher. I think this is the first runner we've seen with more than 15 influence.
I believe so.
Yep. And he has some text. So the first time you play a run event each turn, you gain a credit, 0 base link. So look, definitely in the right colours here. Criminals have the best run events. Already most decks are running 3 account siphons, 2 to 3 inside jobs, triple the neutral one.
Dirty Laundry.
Dirty Laundry.
Yep.
And there's a lot more in this set. It's all pretty good economy, 17 influence as well, and get some extra stuff to play around with.
An identity that it's going to gain you, I mean, how many cards is that? Maybe 9 or 10 events, run events that people are playing currently, not including the ones in this set. If you're maybe seeing 4 or 5 of those a game, possibly even up to 6 or 7 if the game goes long. If you're gaining that many credits off your identity in a game, that's not the worst rate of return.
Yep.
It's probably comparable to Kate or Wayland in
Yep.
terms of the economic advantage, so yeah, it seems good to me.
Yeah, and I just like the extra influence. Good. Because we have the run event tutor, which we'll get into later, means you can actually kind of splash, like maybe something that doesn't usually see play, like Singularity or Demolition Run.
You get a free lucky find over anyone else.
Yeah,
At
there you
worst,
go.
yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
So once again, I think this is going to be a fun build around me card. I reckon it could actually get into maybe some top 8s.
Yeah.
It's certainly not going to, surprise people.
I think if it had 1 link, then it may even be close to being better than Gabe. I think that's one of Gabe's biggest weaknesses.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem with this guy is that it doesn't really do much better that Gabe doesn't already do. Because Gabe wants to play lots of run events because it's so aggressive and you want to maximize your early power. And this, lots of times I can see it just giving maybe the same or less or fewer credits rather, but the extra influence and the chance maybe to play some cards which Gabe doesn't and have them be more effective is a point in its favour.
Yeah.
A bit less predictable in game.
That's true, definitely.
Cool. Next up, Silhouette.
So this is a Silhouette, the Stealth Operative. She's 40 minimum deck size, 15 influence, 0 link. First time you make a successful run on HQ each turn, you may expose 1 card. So it's worth pointing out you can only expose cards that are in play. Yep. So you can't expose cards from their hand or from R&D.
It's an exposed on access.
Yep.
and it only works on runs on HQ. So
only the first time.
And only the first time. So immediately you've got a couple of comparisons. So 40 card deck size, you're comparing it to CT, and running on HQ, you're looking at Gabe. So is this card better than either of those two? Inclined to kind of say no.
What I would compare it to actually is Andromeda. Andromeda starts with 45 cards, but 4 of those cards start in your hand.
Yeah.
So compared to starting in your deck, it's quite a lot better.
Yeah, sure.
And a link.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess combo-wise with the whole blackguard thing, I think we've already found out people have been trying as hard as possible to make that thing work, and it doesn't. So having the identity for it doesn't make it that much better. Probably not.
No. I think Snitch and Blackguard is as powerful as that combo is going to be. Snitch is as good a friend to Blackguard as this is going to be, and Blackguard still costs 11 at the end of the day. So,
yeah, that's true. It didn't get any cheaper while we were looking.
Yeah.
Look, maybe if we do get this heavily populated Jinteki meta, which we kind of all, I guess, expect for the first couple of months, maybe run it, try it, expose some stuff. You might win a couple more games than what you usually would, but I don't think it's gonna, break the walls.
No.
Cool.
Yeah.
Next up, we've got Calling in Favors.
This card is actually quite similar to Diversified Portfolio, so what it does, this Calling in Favors does, is it gains 1 credit for each installed connection resource. So
0 cost of it.
0 cost, yeah. So it's 1 cheaper than Diversified Portfolio, but it has the same kind of horizontal build up.
So immediately connections, you've got Hostage in faction. How many good targets are there for Hostage? There's a few.
Contacts, Mr. Lee, John Massanori.
Yeah.
Scrubber. Scrubber.
Katie Jones,
Penny
definitely.
Jones, yeah.
Yeah. So you've got some good contact, but you've got some good. You have some good contacts.
Yeah.
But they're all unique.
Yeah.
And ultimately, you need 4 in play to make this better than Easy Mark.
Yep.
Or Dirty Laundry.
Quite a high barrier to clear, especially for an economic spell.
When Dirty Laundry's, Easy Mark is best played in the first 3 or 4 turns of the game.
Yeah.
In which situation you're unlikely to have more than 3 connections installed. Yeah.
Maybe if you're playing Ian Sterling and you're going super late and you do want to set up triple scrubbers, triple compromised employee, I think that's a connection. If you've got a bunch of nice non-unique unique targets, maybe it gets there as a 1-of or a 2-of as that gaining 6-7 credits, but I
think Dark Deal is a connection too. A CD.
It is a connection, with Hostage and Decoy as well.
Yeah.
So look, you probably have the amount that you need to make it good, but you just have better options anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, good doesn't really cut it.
Yeah, not in criminal.
Yeah.
All right. Next up, we've got Early Bird. So Early Bird is a 1-cost event. It's a priority run. I don't think we've seen a priority event before.
I don't believe so.
But I think there has been another one, Spoiled, and all the priority events mean they need to be played on your first click.
Right.
So it's a run event. It says make a run and gain a click.
So it's essentially click neutral once you play it.
Click neutral, correct. It does cost you 1. If you're express tender, you're gaining that 1 back. Yeah.
So I mean, if you compare it instantly to what's the shaper card that costs 0, pay click to gain 2 clicks?
All-Nighter.
Compared to All-Nighter, you're instead of paying the click to gain a click, you're paying a credit to gain a click, which is a lot better, right?
Yep. And you've got a lot more effects that will go off on this one. You can get your Data Cycle counters, you can get your Express counter, you can get your Desperado counters. So, yeah, the main thing is it just is not a high impact card.
No, and playing on your first click pressures your turn, creates some pressure on your turn, which isn't really optimal. And the payoff isn't that large, but in some sort of, if you want to hit them with medium or really lots of the things that All-Nighter was designed to do, I think this is most of the time going to be a better version.
Yeah, and I mean, there are a lot of situations in which running on the first click or certainly earlier in your turn is optimal. Removing tags, not getting hit by viroids are reasonable things to want to avoid. Yeah.
Now, I don't think this works with our tutor. I don't think it does, because it is a double event, so you've
No,
already
you
spent that click,
can't
so
play
you
it
wouldn't
in
be
your
able
first
to.
click,
So,
as far as I'm aware.
yeah, so look, I think you're either playing a set of these or you're not playing them at all. I don't think it fits into existing builds. We might be wrong, to be honest. But we'll move on.
Yeah, I think just quickly, Data Sucker Desperado is the core of a good anti build. And
It's the core of a lot of builds.
yeah, most people splash for those cards, and this is good with that, so it can't be awful.
Definitely has potential.
Yeah. All right, Express Delivery, featuring our friend Express. One cost event, look at the top 4 cards of your stack and add one of those cards to your grip, shuffle your stack. So you're tutoring for something from the top 4 cards of your stack.
Yep, so you're getting the best card of the top 4 cards of your deck, which is always fantastic. Cost you credit, who really cares? You are a criminal, you're usually bathing in money. I think this card's fantastic. I think you should probably be playing, I would be trying to play 2 to 3 in every criminal deck.
I think it's made a lot better by the fact that you shuffle your stack. If you put the remaining cards back,
That
then
would
I
suck.
think it would be not great.
That would suck.
Because you would then have to draw through those before you got something better.
Yeah,
But the fact that it shuffles is
not
good.
at all.
Yeah.
The thing that I'm a bit skeptical of the fact that 4 cards is not really that many. It's not enough to find what you want consistently, and so you have to want quite a large range of things for it to be good.
Well, and if you consider, like, let's say Andy. So Andy, you're already 9 cards down, so you've got a 30x card deck. You know, maybe you've drawn a couple, you've tutored a bit or something, and you need to hit, most of the time you're either looking for an account siphon or something like that, or you're looking for a breaker, or you're looking for the special order to get that breaker.
Or burst economy.
Or burst economy. Well, I guess hitting burst economy with this is not going to be great because you're spending credit to get there, but either way, you're going to be looking for something specific in maybe like a 30 card deck. So, I mean, look, I'm no mathematician, but you know, it seems like you have a decent chance of hitting that. And look, your other option was to click 4 times to draw those 4 cards.
Exactly.
So if it wasn't there, like you time walked yourself for nothing.
Yeah. And it's 1 influence as well. It's worth pointing out. So
Yeah, look, so if this card is as good as I think it is, you know, we might see, you know, decks with 15 influence just going at 12 and running 3 of them.
So Feint is a 2-cost run event, so it triggers our good friend Ken Express Tenma, and it makes a run on HQ, and it bypasses the first 2 pieces of ice encountered that have encountered during the run. And if successful, you cannot access any cards. So from the outset, it looks a little strange. What's the point of running if you aren't going to access any cards? I would say personally.
Yeah. Look, I guess the cards that it synergizes with all the viruses, so Data Sucker, Pheromones, and
medium.
Nerve Agent,
Yeah.
that's only on HQ.
Oh, and the HP, sorry. Yep.
So in a way, it's kind of a free way. It does cost you 2 credits and a click to get counters on those things. Whether or not that's good enough, ultimately, most of the time, an inside job is going to do the same thing. Maybe it costs you a couple of extra credits.
Yeah, I definitely can't really see this card being good while we still have inside job, and when some people aren't even playing 3 copies in their criminal decks. Like, inside job has such broad applications, it can really do anything you want it to early, whereas this only does one specific thing and it doesn't do it very well. So I'd look elsewhere if you want to trigger your Data Suckers.
And it costs the same amount of credits. I mean, a lot of the time you're not going to feel like paying 2 credits to inside job R&D just for the chance of scoring to trigger your Data Sucker. I mean, you might do it, but it never feels great. This, you're not even giving yourself the chance of scoring.
Exactly.
And you're still paying the 2 credits.
Yeah. Look, the only thing that I think this is going to work with is if you're playing Gabe and you want to play Nerve Agent. If you're really big on Nerve Agent, like it doesn't cost you anything with Gabe because you're going to gain the 2 credits back. Puts a counter on the Nerve Agent, means the next time you get in there, you're accessing 2, 3, 4, etc. But I don't think that's good enough to be playing a card this bad.
No.
Even then, I mean, when you think about it, you've then got to be able to get past the 2 pieces of ice anyway to use the counter. So
And you're playing Nerve Agent with probably Sneak Doors. So.
yeah.
We'll move on from there. So next up is Legwork. So this is another run. So it triggers our friend Express Tenma. Costs 2. Make a run on HQ. If successful, access 2 additional cards from HQ. So this is Maker's Eye for HQ. We've been seeing this one coming for a long, long time. And it's finally here. I'm happy with it. I don't think it's going to be as good as Maker's Eye. You're not going to be jamming 2 to 3 or R&D interface, your choice. But I think maybe this sees play as a one-off, as a utility target.
I mean, you definitely get into situations in games where you're pretty sure they've got an agenda in HQ, you can get in once, maybe twice, and you think, is it worth it? Gee, I wish I could have a multiple access on HQ.
Yeah.
I feel that a lot. And I think having the ability to get that effect for a 2-cost event,
Yeah, I think this card's actually quite strong.
Yeah. And you don't have to put that big investment into HQ interface and things like that. So, yeah, look, I definitely think with the next card that we're going to look at, actually, this makes perfect sense as a one-off.
Yeah.
And that card's Planned Assault.
Yep, so Planned Assault, it's a 2-cost event, double. As an additional cost, you have to spend an additional click. Search your stack for a run event and play that run event, paying its play cost, ignoring any additional costs, then shuffle your stack. So you can search for a double run, if you like.
Yep.
And you're essentially only paying a 2 credit premium and no extra clicks, which is pretty sweet.
Are there any double runs?
Yeah, running interference and singularity.
Oh, of course, man.
Is exploratory roll a double?
No, I don't think that card's that bad.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So you're tutoring for runs. If it's a double, you get a free click, which is sweet. But even without that, tutoring for run events is
It's fantastic.
Yeah, tutors are just generally pretty insane. Like, they would have to be pretty inefficient for them to not be playable. And this is definitely the opposite of very inefficient. It's in fact quite efficient and does everything you want to do. I think it's the most important card from this pack.
compared to Hostage.
Yeah, Criminal was fantastic before Hostage, and I think Hostage really took it over the edge. It allowed you to get, like the Worlds list, only playing one Katie, one
Masanori and one contact.
One contact. So, the fact that it allows you to do that saves you so much deck space. You don't have to be drawing all these extra copies of Katie. And this has more utility than that. I mean, Hostage only really gets you economy cards. This gets you a Maker's Eye. This gets you a legwork. Gets you an account siphon, most importantly.
Yeah, account life and inside job, I think, will be the 1-2 punch.
Yep. It's just fantastic. I think that it's definitely going to see play. The numbers will be the key part. I don't think it's strictly always going to be a 3-off.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
The fact that drawing 2 of them is a bit inefficient because they each cost an extra click, and the fact that inside job and account siphon are both extremely click intensive already.
Yep.
It's very important when you play them on your turn. So,
but having this as a nice, neat package where you can have your Maker's Eye, you can have your legwork, and all the other stuff that you're already playing, I think that's where it's at.
Yeah, if you think just about legwork, like if you had 3 inside jobs, 3 account siphons, which you're probably playing anyway, and then you add in 1 legwork, this gives you the tutor for those 2 important ones and the legwork on the off chance.
And I would definitely be cutting it. If I was playing 2 to 3 R&D interfaces, I would definitely cut 1 from Maker's Eye in that situation, just to have that utility. I think that's going to be good. I think that's pretty unanimous that this is a great card.
Powerful card.
Cool. Next up, we're on to hardware.
Yeah, so first hardware we've got is Logos, or Logos if you like. It's a 4 I don't think anyone likes that, we'll call it Logos. It's a 4-cost hardware console, which means you can only limit 1 console per player, possibly the worst worded rule text in this game.
yeah, that's not great.
Yeah, so you can only have 1 console in play, is what that means. Plus 1 memory. Your maximum hand size is increased by 1. And whenever the corpse scores an agenda, you may search your stack for a card and add it to your grip, then shuffle your stack.
I think this is a interesting one. I think that, unfortunately, Desperado is definitely still better. But this gives you an interesting alternative to play. I would totally consider playing this with Andy. It gives you more chance to get it early, which is when you want it. And all of a sudden, if they're scoring 1-2 agendas, you're getting the exact card that you need. Whether that's a breaker to let you get in, or whether that's just to get an account siphon. Like, a lot of decks will go pretty low with a biotic labor just to get that extra agenda out there. So get an account siphon, just put them down.
I guess if you think about consoles, you get diminishing returns on consoles as the game goes on anyway. So Desperado is worse if you play it later in the game. So if we keep that in mind and think about the likelihood that the corpse is going to score 1 to 2 agendas after you play this, if you played in the early game. If this was a 4-cost event that said, over the course of the game, you get to search your library for 2 cards, it would be fine.
Yes.
Yeah? So you get the additional memory, you get the additional maximum hand size.
And the maximum hand size, that isn't horrible.
No, it's definitely consequential. Like,
And especially in handy, you know, that means you're not maybe pressured as much to dump your whole hand out. You can keep a couple of extra options. Maybe get a run in or something. Run some extra runs in earlier when you would usually maybe not like to. Yeah, look, I think Desperado is still better. That's the main thing. You can't really do much better than that. But people are going to try and play this. Like I said with Express, maybe someone will end up on a top table with Logos. I don't think that means it means it's strictly better.
Yeah, I guess one of the weaknesses of this card, like it's generally good to be rewarded for your opponent doing something they want to do, but it's even better to reward yourself for doing things that you want to do.
Yes,
and that's what Desperado
and
does.
you have the most control about how your actions are going to influence the game.
Yeah.
All right, next up, Public Terminal.
So Public Terminal, is a one-cost hardware and gives you 1 recurring credit that you can use to play run events. It's a bit strange that the best run event doesn't cost any credits.
Yeah, I mean, you compare it to prepaid voice pad. So prepaid voice pad was neutral cost 2, but lets you use the credits for playing any event.
Planned Assault is also not a run event.
Yeah,
Which is relevant.
Because
But you can use this
Only
credit
double,
to
right?
you can use this credit to play the run event that you play because you have to pay
Yes.
costs for it.
But yes, it still brings us to our earlier point about the counter.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, you're still going to be playing events that cost you things. You're still going to probably have 2 to 3 inside jobs, probably triple
works and Maker's Eyes and etc.
dirty laundry. So you're going to have enough targets, but you know it goes back to are you better playing this or are you better just playing easy mark? Are you better just playing the dirty laundry that's in your hand? So I don't know. Like I originally thought that prepaid voice pad might be able to get there. That there was already enough targets in criminal decks, and every so often you can see with 1 or 2. And this I think is on the same power level. It's not better. It's not necessarily worse. I don't think it's going to get there.
No, I mean,
No, maybe in a year's time when we have 2 more cycles and Express 10 is all the rage and we've got our 40 event
And all you're playing is events.
Yeah,
we can only imagine that future for now.
Yeah.
39 run events, 3 public terminals, 3 prepaid voice pad. All you need.
Yeah.
We'll move on. So we've got unregistered S&W. I think that's Smith and
Wesson, I believe.
35.
I'm definitely not the law expert here.
Not the gun enthusiast.
So unregistered S&W 35. So it's a hardware. It's a weapon. I think this is the first time we've seen a weapon.
I believe so.
It costs 1, 3 influence. It says use unregistered S&W 35 only if you have made a successful run on HQ this turn. Click, so 2 clicks. Trash 1 resed Bioroid, Clone, Executive, or Sysop in a server without paying its trash cost. So it can't hit Bioroid dice.
I must admit, I originally misread it. I'm like, yes, you can use it to kill their
Wotan.
Eli, but
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's not the case.
If only that were the case.
Yes.
So
we could kill the Eli 1.0s.
Yes.
I think one of the big problems is that you're spending 3 clicks.
Yeah, although it doesn't trash itself like I thought it originally did. So.
Oh, right, I didn't realise that.
In the case that there actually happens to be a deck that utilizes, say, I've seen some lists that play Caprice and Ash for the,
the Super Friends combo.
Yeah, to make them go through your enormous remote multiple times. So this actually is an extremely efficient way to answer those kind of cards.
Sure. So, I mean, look at the other targets. So, you've mentioned Ash, you've mentioned Caprice. What are the other Bioroid clones, executives, and sysops?
I think
that are
Bernice.
those are the big ones, but Bernice, the Wayland sysop that escapes my...
Simone Diego.
Simone Diego.
Akatiro Watanabe.
Yeah, and maybe...
Akatari.
I can't think of any right now. Midori.
Yeah. But so the list is long, but the list of playables is pretty short. So looking at Ash, looking at Caprice, ultimately those are cards that it'll be fantastic to answer them cheaply. And this kind of does it unless they're on HQ.
Yeah, it's a bit unfortunate that you can't just use it immediately, or that you can't choose how to use it because you have to get into HQ first. But
it's just reminiscent of Fantasy Flight's sort of approach to unique effects in this game. Like we've spoken about Double League Reversal,
yeah,
Wolfie before, and how it has that additional drawback.
There's a frequent topic. Many cards just have unnecessary, extraneous rather drawbacks, which just hurt their playability for pretty much no reason and kind of restrict how unique effects can be.
I mean, there was a day and age where Foxfire saw play because the amount of targets that it had was wide, and you'd often hit something. Foxfire being you trash virtual or link,
a link or a virtual resource.
I
believe. I played it once.
Yeah.
Yep, and there were some targets, and this, I think, there are some targets, but it's certainly they're not seeing as much play as when Foxfire was at one point playable.
Yeah, the fact that even if they have a target, you're still not guaranteed to be able to actually make your card useful. It kind of dooms it.
Yeah, and maybe if we get some kind of hardware tuner.
Yeah, the other thing I was going to say about it is the reason I mentioned 3 clicks is that Caprice being one of the 2 main things you want to kill with it. The reason you want something like this is to save yourself clicks rather than having to run the server 3 times.
Sure.
And the fact that you have to spend those clicks means that not only is it only useful when they have the Caprice, it's only useful when they have the Caprice in a server that's expensive for you to get through.
Yes.
Yeah. Sure.
Just the kind of confluence of factors which doesn't happen very often.
Yes.
You also have to draw this when they have the Caprice.
Yes.
Well, that's goes without saying.
Alright, so we'll move on. So window.
Yeah, so Window is a 2-cost piece of hardware. You can pay a click to draw 1 card from the bottom of your stack, and it has 1 influence. Rather strange little card.
It's definitely not as good as the operating system, I would say.
Yeah.
Depending on your perspective.
I think the most obvious combo is with Mr. Lee.
Yeah.
So where you at least know the bottom card of your deck. So in the case where you maybe have a hard decision and you bottom something that was maybe a utility type effect, and you don't draw any cards until that utility effect comes up and you want to use it, I don't know, maybe you put a...
And you have to never use Mr. Lee again.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe you put an emergency shutdown to the bottom and then you hit an emergency shutdown target. You're like, well,
I think the problem is that the point of playing cards with like Mr. Lee is that you get to make your draws better. So by playing a card which makes your draws worse simply by existing, it kind of defeats the purpose, I think.
And it also comes back to what I was saying about the look at the top 4, choose one, put it in your hand, shuffle your library. Like, it's essentially giving you the option of not shuffling your library and having those 3 cards again, which most of the time you're not going to want to do.
I think
exactly.
Yeah.
I think if I were to draw this card from Mr. Lee, I would probably bottom it.
Yep. Yep.
So that good for Mr. Lee, bad for Window.
Yeah. No, I think this is definitely on the bad end of the scale. Alright, next up we're finally into the programs.
We are. So the next card is Alias. So it's a 3-cost killer, so Sentry Breaker that costs 1 memory and has costs 2 credits to give a +3 swing. So it kind of has the criminal uneven number boosting ability where it's not just a flat 1 for 1, which makes it a bit harder to gauge the strength of, because to examine it really you have to look at how the playable ice is distributed.
Yeah, absolutely. It's much more meta dependent.
And also it has something that you'll see in 2 more cards, I believe, in the set, which is that it can't be used on remotes. It can be only used on ice protecting a central server.
So, yeah. And it's 1 base strength, so, I mean, how big is the downside of not being able to get into remotes?
Not super big, I would say. I'd say it's relevant, but, I mean, I definitely wouldn't want to be relying on only central breakers. It's just a path to just getting wrecked by Sansan.
Yeah, and keeping in mind that this is Criminal's best breaker. This is Sentry. This is where they have the options of Ninja and Fem, and where Mimic is only 1 to splash.
And Fairy as well.
And Fairy as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about this, like, again, going back to a slow R&D like Kate deck. You're not often going to be running centrals, you're just focusing on winning off running remotes, you're just going to be focusing on winning off an R&D run or multiple R&D runs that give you big accesses. This compared to Mimic, I mean, you can get through an Archer in a pinch with this, because it can pump its strength, but most of the time 2, 3, 4 cost sentries are going to cost so much more to get through, and it's 2 influence rather than 1.
And we're seeing a lot more kind of middling sentries.
Yeah.
If you're expecting the Jinteki, then you're going to see neural katanas, and that's where Mimic is good. It's where this is unfortunately quite bad. Look, maybe it'll get there, well, maybe the central breakers will get there, but I don't think this one will get there.
No, I don't think
because
this is
of
the best one.
because of the other options. So.
Yeah, I just can't imagine playing a sentry breaker and then not even being able to break the sentry. That just seems like the worst thing you could possibly do.
Yeah. All right, so we'll move on to the next of our central breakers. So we have Breach. So Breach is the Fractor, the barrier breaker. 2 cost, 2 strength, 1 memory. Has 2 credits, break up to 3 barrier subroutines, and 2 credits plus 4 strength. So this one's a bit more interesting. So it's unfortunately, even if you look at the most played barriers, so we've got Eli, Ice Wall, your Wall of Statics and your Bastions. On the higher end you've got maybe Hadrian's Wall, that still sees some play, various Heimdalls of large degree, and on all of those, this kind of doesn't get there. I think Heimdall 1 is probably the best application of this, because it's only going to cost you 4.
That's true, because it's going to break up to 3. Yeah.
Yep, but I mean, what's it costing you to get through a Hadrian's? It's costing you 6.
2, 4, 6, yeah.
6, yep. Eli, it's going to cost you 4.
Yeah.
In fact, Eli,
Which is the same as Corona.
Yeah, Eli, Wall
Yep.
of Static, Bastion, it's all going to cost you 4.
Wall of Stag is actually, it costs far more than even Corona does. It costs
Yes.
2 more.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is kind of unfortunate.
So the fact that this is 2 influence, Corona is 2 influence.
So this kind of restricts it to only being played really in criminals where you don't have the influence range for Corona, which means you've probably done something wrong at some point. Or you're doing something super spectacular. You know what? It actually, now that I say the numbers out loud, some of them are pretty good on those higher end dice, but when it comes to barriers, most of them are on that lower end.
Yeah, definitely the most important thing is being able to break paper walls, ice walls, wall of statics, bastions, etc. cheaply.
It doesn't really get there.
Doesn't do it at all.
Yeah. And then we've got the last one here. Actually.
No, we've got our friend Bug.
Yes.
Popping up in between.
The code gate breaker might have to wait for a little bit.
Yeah, so we'll come back to Passport later on. So Bug is a 0 cost, 1 memory unit program. It's not an icebreaker, so it has no strength. Install only if you made a successful run on HQ this turn. Whenever the Corp draws a card, you may pay 2 credits to reveal that card.
I don't think this is worth the memory, and even if it was 0 memory, I don't think it was even that good. I don't think it would be worth it.
I have to say, comparing this to Deep Thought, it's quite a bit better. It doesn't cost 1 to install.
Yes.
You're essentially getting the same effect, except you're getting it in their turn rather than yours, and you have to pay for it. You have to pay the 2 credits to reveal it, but it doesn't take as much work to set up, and given that Crims have access to the multiple HQ accessing cards, could potentially be okay.
I don't know, 2 credits is a lot.
2 credits is a lot.
Yeah, the big problem is that you can't really win a game by spending credits on things which don't help you score points. It's just not really a good strategy.
And if you consider, having mediums or R&D interfaces or Maker's Eyes and stuff like that, you could, instead of spending 2, 4, 6, 8 credits to look at those, to see those cards, you could just be making runs. You could just be seeing those cards and potentially stealing them. And a lot of the time, like if you pay 2 credits, see an agenda, and then they're immediately like Bionic Labor, score it. That's gonna suck.
If this was an ability that was tacked onto a card that had another relevant ability, perhaps it would be better, but as it is, it's probably too expensive.
So next up we've got we've got the man. We've got Gingerbread.
Fan favourite, I would say.
Catch me if you can.
Yeah.
Catch me if you can. Yeah. So I guess I'm talking about Gingerbread. It's a 2 cost icebreaker. It actually doesn't have one of the traditional subtypes that you might see. So it costs 1 memory, and it's 1 to break a tracer subroutine. So this is any subroutine from, I believe, any ice which has the ability to trace someone. So it doesn't, with say, Caduceus, you can break the 2 traces, but even on ice which only have 1 trace, and some other ability you can break those. You can, exactly, that's an excellent example. You can break the other subroutines as well. and once again has the criminal 2 credits for +3 strength and 2 base strength. Obviously its playability is going to depend quite significantly on the number of relevant traces, because unlike the 3 traditional ice types, you can't even rely on your opponent to have a single target for it to break.
It's true. And the decks, most decks probably have 1 or 2 targets, just maybe they don't rely on the trace. I mean, most HP lists are running itchy ones, maybe even Victor 2s. Both of those have traces. NBM lists, I guess Data Raven. Caduceus as well, so he's playing most Draco.
Shinobi.
Yeah.
So it has some targets, but do you want to be spending deck space on this icebreaker that just hits those select targets? I mean,
some of those are hard to break. I mean, Itchy is hard to break with if you run in with your Mimic Corroder suite. It's hard to get through Itchy sometimes. You just get blown out by it, and having this can help you.
But are you better off getting this out than, say, like a Deus Ex or one of the other Sharpshooter, those types of targets?
I guess it costs probably not than Sharpshooter. I think Sharpshooter protects you better, but this protects you from a broader range of things than Sharpshooter does. So I think it could be okay.
So 2 influence as a utility target?
Potentially, like as a one-off program, you can shoot it up with self-modifying code, you can get it back with a clone chip. Sometimes it might be okay.
It's almost as good as muzzle, I would say.
Yeah.
I mean, it does only cost 2 to install.
Yeah,
like, it's not hugely expensive.
The only problem I can see, main problem I can see with it is how often are you going to want to install it put it in your deck over a more traditional breaker?
Yeah, exactly.
Like it doesn't replace any of the traditional breakers, so you still need to have in the kind of decks that want to have all 3. You still need to have all 3. So I'm not quite sure where it stands.
I think this definitely goes with Professor.
Or in a toolbox, generally. Not the toolbox, but a toolbox.
Yeah. Not the best. Alright, up next, speaking of, I guess, utility type of cards, we've got Grappling Hook. So Grappling Hook is a 2-cost program, 1 memory unit. It doesn't have any subtypes or anything like that. Has 1 effect, which is Trash. So trash this card. Break all but 1 subroutine on a piece of ice. So it doesn't have any strength or anything. I guess the ruling on that is it just works.
Because it's not an icebreaker, I believe it can break anything.
Doesn't need any strength to interact
with anything, rather.
Yep. So look, like I said, utility. It has some targets. It has some pretty good targets, in fact. So archers, Heimdall varieties, Itchies.
Any of the 2.0s, I think it's good against.
Wotan, I guess. So it has some targets that are seeing play. But it is, once again, being compared to Deus Ex and Sharpshooter and these types of cards. 2 influence, if it was 1, I'd definitely say, hey, it's going to pop up somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't mind it. Like, in a toolbox, you can tutor it up with your self-modifying code or your clone chip if you need. It only costs 2 to install, 1 if you're Kate. It trashes, its ability doesn't cost anything, which is really relevant, I think. So you're essentially paying 1 credit to negate the most damaging subroutines of a piece of ice. And I can't think of any ice, really, that blows you out off 1 subroutine. Of your choice.
If we can actually compare it a bit more to like Fairy, so still they both trash. Fairies aren't going to hit, I guess, the vast majority of targets you care about, archers, Itchies, etc. But I guess this has the little bit extra reach that it does get the big barriers.
And Victor, Koge.
Victor 2?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you like that Trace 5?
Yeah.
Yeah, so look, maybe as a utility target, present me with a deck that uses this as a zone breaker and I'll be very happy.
It'll be a strange day indeed.
Yeah. And last program here we've got Passport.
So Passport is a part of the central only breaker cycle. It's 1 to install, 1 memory unit, 2 strength, decoder, 1 credit to break a code gate subroutine, 2 credits to give it +2 strength, and it's got the cannot be used on ice protecting remote servers clause. So it's got the worst credits to strength ratio, but it's got the best install cost to strength ratio.
And it's got that 1-for-1 subroutine as well, which is really
1
good.
to break is really important.
I guess break it down by the targets. What are the common code gates that see play?
Well, what this originally reminds me of actually is
Zoo Keymaster. Yep.
Zoo Keymaster rather.
Yeah.
It has the same 1 in store cost, and it is actually quite reasonably costed compared to it, and that has seen some play in the past.
Yep. I mean, look, the most common code gates to see play will be, I would say, pop-up window, Enigma, Data Pike, and then
booth.
you go bigger, you go toll booth,
Victor 2.
Victor 2, not so much Victor 1, and then within Honor and Profit you have Shiro, and you have Inazuma, and I guess Chum, to throw that one in there. So if you look at the old targets, I'd actually say it's really good. Like hitting, like pop-up window, whatever, it's the same. But hitting Enigmas for 2, hitting Data Pipe for 2, that's fine.
Which is cheaper than Zoo Keymaster, because it needs to pump the strength once. Yeah.
You do suck it on Toll Booth, but I think it's still the same as Zoo.
I believe it is 1. Yes, identical. That's true.
And Shiro and Inazuma, you're going to suck it as well. But for the existing targets, I think it's actually all right. But
yeah, I think of the 3, it has the highest chance to see play, just because the efficiency is much higher, I think.
I think the thing it suffers from, the thing all of these suffer from actually, is that Anarchs and Shapers are going to be the ones that are only going for centrals more often. I think criminals want to get into remotes more often, and in Anarch you have Yogg. Admittedly, this does different things to Yogg, because it can hit the bigger code gates, but you've probably got Data Sucker. So
the fact that they're all 2 influence kind of restricts their playability a little bit.
And I'm not sure it's that much better than Gordian Blade, is the other thing I was going to say. So, yeah.
So look, I think, like you said, most chance of seeing play, but overall pretty low on the power level scale. Bit of a weird one that FFG threw at us, but we'll see if it develops in the future.
Yep.
So next up, we're into the events.
So the next card is Push Your Luck, and if you play this card, you really will push your luck. So it's a bit of a strange card. So you pay 2, and then you secretly spend any number of credits. So then the corp guesses, or I guess makes some sort of deduction about, if they can, about whether it's odd or even. And if they guess wrong, you double your credits, your spent credits. If they guess right, you lose your spent credits. So you gamble any number of credits you want on kind of a 50-50 bet most of the time. And that's kind of not really where we want our economy cards to be.
Yeah. So turn 1, you play Push Your Luck. Let's say you have no other economy in your hand. So it costs you 2, so you're down to a credit pool of 3.
Yeah.
So you can go max at 3, and then they'll say odd, and you will have no credits. Or you can go 2 and try and gain them, and then you say, alright, they go odd, and then you gain 4. So now you have 4 credits.
And you've gained 2. Right? Have you?
So it doubles the amount of credits you
twice the amount spent. So you've spent 2 already.
So you started with 5, you played this, and then you ended with 4.
Yes.
So that doesn't seem good.
This does not seem great.
Alright, let's move on.
So next up we've got security testing. So this is a zero cost resource. I'm liking it. It's a job. I'm liking this more. So when your turn begins, choose a server. The first time you make a successful run on that server this turn, instead of accessing cards, gain 2 credits.
This card reminds me a little bit of I can't think of the name.
Games Identity, Bank Job.
Yeah.
Bank Job. Sorry, of course. In that it kind of works when they have some servers unprotected and gives you some. It's an economy card that works kind of only when they have servers unprotected.
You know what's sweet about this compared to Bank Job? It's archives.
Yes, of course. The fact
Desperado Data Archive.
that it's Centrals is much better than Bank Job. And actually, one thing, I originally thought that you could target the same thing multiple times, but it turns out you can't.
Yep.
Each one is a replacement effect. So that, but still, for being a zero-cost resource, the ability to gain you 2 credits a turn is powerful, even if probably it's not going to be that way over the as the game goes longer. But I think for a deck that wants to keep the corp as in the early game for as long as possible with 1 or 0 ISO on their centrals and the remotes and their centrals especially, I think it can be a very viable option.
I think it's additional pressure for archives. I mean, there's a lot of times where you're going to run archives just to get a data sucker token, and if you have Desperado at the same time, get the credit back.
Yep.
This just gives you that extra bonus for doing that.
3 influence, we're never going to see this card outside of Crim.
No.
That's way too much. And I believe that there was some extra kind of combo with the fact that you don't access the cards. You can potentially shut down things like the identities when you make a successful run, subliminal messaging, things like that. Yeah,
Oh, I
the
see
run
what
is
you
still
mean.
successful.
Of course. Sorry. Yes,
But
you are right.
But you can't access cards. So, and look, maybe if there's some shocks in their archives, you can still get your data sucker tokens and your Desperado tokens without actually taking the shock damage. So.
Yeah, but I think the best chance for its playability is if there's an aggressive, or maybe it just fits into the existing Gage decks.
Yeah.
Cool. We'll move on to highly
Yeah, a highly anticipated card
card.
around these parts. One Theophilus Bagbiter.
I think maybe I'll talk about
Yeah, perhaps you should introduce
Theophilus.
Mr. Bagbiter. Yeah.
So Theophilus really asks the corp the big question, which is a raven like a typing desk?
Why is a raven like a typing desk?
So it's a excuse me, of course. So it's a 3-cost resource. It's a connection, so you can get it with hostage. When you install it, it has an ability which makes you lose all credits from your credit pool.
A strong ability.
And then your maximum hand size is equal to the number of credits in your credit pool. So
Just imagine.
It's true that it has a unique effect, but I think when evaluating cards, at least my first test is, if I were the corp, would I want to play this effect for the runner? Like, would I be happy if I played this effect for the runner? And I think if I could get the runner to lose all their credits and have their hand equal to their credit pool, then I would do it. So that does not bode well for Theophilus.
No. And I think if you sort of imagine a relatively close to the start of the game scenario, perhaps even first turn, you could play Theophilus for 3. You would then be on 2 credits. You could then lose your remaining 2 credits. You could then easy mark, and then maybe gain 2 more credits, and you would have accomplished nothing at all for a whole turn. Seems pretty bad.
It's pretty bad.
You have to work very hard to make it okay.
And when you're doing that, all the while you're amassing credits and not spending them, which in fact you can't do because you lose them all when you play Theophilus. So while you're playing Theophilus, then amassing credits, the corp's probably just beating you at the actual game. While you have these cards in your hand. So
we're definitely going to see people say, well, no, you get him out, and then you get your professional contact, and then all of a sudden you just spend 40 clicks to get 40 credits and have your whole deck in your hand. But it's like, how long is it taking you to get to the point before you just start drawing cards?
Yeah, the cost of putting these cards in your deck where they don't do anything on their own and they need more things to go right to do something is just too immense.
Yeah. And he punishes you.
Yeah.
A lot of the time. If you're rich, you actually just lose all your money.
Bite the bag. Bite the bag. All right, next up, let's talk about a card that could potentially see play.
Definitely more than
Bagbiter. Yeah.
It's a step up.
So, Triumph Contacts, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. So Triumph Contact, it's a 2-cost connection resource again. You cannot use Triumph Contact more than once per turn. You can spend a click to gain 2 credits. When Triumph Contact is trashed, suffer 3 meat damage, and it's 1 influence.
So this kind of goes to how much do you want to lose against Tag and Bag, I guess. This really makes you pretty vulnerable.
Yeah, I think that evaluating the card, it's possibly even better just to forget about that and think about whether it's good without that.
Yeah, I think the best comparison is to Underworld Contact. Like Underworld Contact, it gives you essentially money each turn. Underworld Contact requires you to have an extra link. Most of the time Underworld Contact gets played in decks which already have a base link. But on the side of Underworld Contact, it doesn't require you to use a click each turn to take a credit, which is a pretty bad action. Usually, I think that in my games, especially when the game goes longer, I'd like to not spend my clicks just gaining single credits. So I think that's really the biggest drawback to this card, more than the trash the meat damage.
I guess the other comparison is Katie Jones.
Yeah, absolutely.
Only able to be used once per turn. Instead of getting 2 credits straight away, you can have 3 credits in the bank that you can pick up later.
Yeah, and both of those cards are maybe ones where, well, Katie, you can only have one in play, so you really don't want to be playing. You don't want to be filling your deck with Katies. Same thing, I don't think you really want to have multiple Trimaps.
No, you don't really want to get tagged and then have 2 Trimaps trashed. Or take 6 meat damage.
Or just even, for maximum value, have to spend 2 clicks on your turn gaining credits. So that's really not something you want to do.
The second one's much worse than the first. And that's the same with Katie Jones.
But I think this card is just not on the same power level as Katie.
No.
Not even close.
And so that's, I know I made a comment about the meat damage just then, but if we take that whole discussion and say even without that clause, it's probably not good enough. Adding in quite a significant drawback. 3 meat damage is quite a lot.
If they're trying to scorch you to death, it really can be the difference between them needing 1 scorch death and then needing 2 scorch deaths.
Yeah, and sometimes even they don't even need the scorch deaths. Maybe they just randomly tag you and you just die.
Yep.
I prefer go busting.
Yep.
Alright, so we're on to the neutrals. So the next one here is mass install. So this is an event, cost 1. It says install up to 3 programs from your group, paying all install costs. So I guess the first comparison is Monolith, which was a format all-star. I think we can all agree.
Yeah, 18's not much.
Until it got put on the restricted list by FFG.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
No, I guess this will kind of stop people from actually trying to play Monolith.
That's good. That's great.
Definitely
unless your 3 programs total up to 17 credits, this is cheaper.
Yeah, the rate, it has an effect which is valuable in that if you want to draw lots of cards, maybe in some like quality time engine, quality time, maybe quality time,
Professor. Where you're going to have a lot of targets.
Exile maybe, or something like the spell, I can't remember the name, that you discard cards and you gain 2 for each program, discard programs, and then you gain 2 for each
Capstone?
No. What's it called?
It's a dude, he's
freelance coding contract.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so maybe in some kind of program-oriented deck with that, then it could be good. But at the moment, I think the cards are just not there for this kind of effect to be wanted.
Yeah. If we see more like programs with zero memory, because throwing down 3 programs, like you're probably a lot of the time it's like shipping from Miramov. Like a lot of the time you only really want to do 2, so you lose a third of the effect. And maybe this will get there.
I doubt it. I think this is just a pretty bad
maybe we'll get there in a couple of years' time in some kind of combo deck. I don't know.
Next up, we have a slightly more interesting card, Q Coherence Chip. It's neutral, 0 cost, piece of hardware, +1 memory unit. Trash Q Coherence chip when a program is trashed.
So the interesting ruling that came up is that this gets trashed not just when something is trashed from play, when they're trashed from anywhere.
From your hand, from R&D.
Yeah, and I think the flavor text actually references that.
We're going to have to wait for any official ruling to come out before we
obviously. But look, I don't know.
If that includes cards you discard because you're over your maximum hand size at the end of the turn, that's pretty bad.
Yeah.
That would be the absolute death knell for this card.
Look, I like playing Dyson to get to 2 link to be able to play Underworld contracts and stuff, and I'm happy paying 3 there, but for this, I don't even think I'm happy paying 0.
No.
If it gave me a credit every turn, I can't be happy.
Yeah, if I really want this effect, I'd just rather play Akamatsu chip, the 1 cost that just gives you a base memory. You don't have to worry about, do I want to install new programs? If I do that, I lose memory, and just
pay the influence.
Yeah,
and you've got the new Shaper one as well that gives you 2.
Exactly, Cyber Solutions. I just would rather not have to worry about that kind of thing when I'm trying to get an effect that needs to be as consistent as this one.
Yes, if you're playing this, then it's central to your deck strategy to be able to have lots of programs in play.
Cool. So, speaking of programs, next neutral program, Overmind.
So Overmind is a 4-cost, 0-strength AI breaker, something which has traditionally been very strong in the past, AI breakers, as they can break any sort of subroutine, regardless of ice type. And what Overmind does is costs 1 memory, and you place 1 power counter on it when it's installed for each unused memory. So if you install it and it's the first thing you install, then usually it's going to have 3 power counters, and if you're chaos steering, maybe 4 power counters. And you can use one of the hosted counters to break a single subroutine, and 1 credit to give a +1 strength. It starts with 0 strength. So what do we think?
I don't think this is better than Crypsis.
I think this is, being in a criminal pack, I think gives it away, but this is targeted towards criminal decks. It's targeted towards early aggression, it's targeted towards you only need to play this one thing, and then you can pretty much run anywhere as long as you've got 5 or 6 credits.
But I compare it to, so you look at the early game options that the runner has. So they're going to be raising things like Enigma, Eli, Data Pike, things like that. And a lot of those have 2 subroutines, and that's going to cost you 2 power counters.
Yeah.
So if you're installing this as Andy or as Gabe, you can break it once, and then you're kind of stuck on the second one. Obviously, Eli, you can click through. Whilst Crypsis costs you 1 more, you get to keep it in play. Like, you know, if you kind of get stuck in that situation where you really want to run, but you're also trying to dig for that last breaker, you can still use Crypsis. Whereas I'm not really okay leaving this one sitting around with like 1 power counter, because you might have to break a second. Obviously, you've got E3 feedback, but...
Yeah, I guess even as something that you only use to break things you absolutely need to break, it may be okay.
The thing is that it's so expensive for a card, which, if you want to do that, and I think the real drawback is that you have to install it before the things you really want to install.
Yeah.
And look, there is the ruling there that unused memory that can only be used for specific things, which I think Deep Red's the only thing that you do get the extra power counters. People are going to try and build around this. It's not going to be good.
No, I mean, that's not really, the problem is not really the that it can break so few subroutines. It's just that it's not very efficient in general, and the number of power counters it has is just an unfortunate coincidence of that fact, I think.
Even if it was 2 for each one, it would still suffer from that. I think. Yeah.
So we'll move on. So on to resources. Neutral resource. We've got Oracle May. So this is unique. We've got a diamond. It's a connection, so hostage. 1 cost. You can only use her. You cannot use her more than once per turn. I think that's a different wording to.
Yeah. You may only use her once per turn, but
who cares?
Yeah.
Her action is spend a click, name a card type, reveal the top card of your stack. If the revealed card is of the named type, draw it and gain 2 credits, otherwise trash it. So, look, if you wanted to go deep, you pretty much have to play this with motivation.
Yeah.
Otherwise, spending a click to do absolutely nothing is not great.
Yeah, I would just like to point out that it also costs 1 influence, which is not obvious because it's neutral.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think the fact that you can just spend a click to do nothing is really not where you want to be in a card. The fact that even just comparing it to drawing a card, it's not always better. Because, you know, if you miss on it, then you just lose the whole action.
Yep. And you lose the card, importantly.
It's true.
You trash the card, which is a horrible drawback.
Yeah.
You trash a program, you lose your Q coherence trip. No,
but I mean, you lose your Yogg, you lose your Corroder.
Exactly, and lots of decks just don't have an efficient way to get them back.
Yeah.
So, on its own, this card is bad.
Yeah.
What do we think about it with support, with motivation, with that type of stuff?
I think motivation I've never seen anyone play it, and I've seen some people play some pretty crazy things. So, you know, if it's comboing with a card that nobody's ever played and is in and of, that other card is in and of itself not very powerful, has very low raw power, this card is also the same thing.
The main problem is that the payoff is just not high enough. Even if you build your deck with 44 of one type, then you know you're still probably not getting enough of a bonus from this card to justify the fact that you have to play 44 of one type.
And you're foregoing playing Shore Gamble because you're playing 44 programs or something.
So look, people are going to build it with motivation. Then we can look at that and say whether it's good or not. The influence is definitely a thing. So this is one that I definitely wait on.
Compare it to Triumph Contact or compare it to Katie Jones again.
Yeah,
like
once every turn you can do it.
Once every turn you're putting 3 in the bank. This is once every turn you're having to set up this elaborate plot just to get 2 credits and 1 card.
Yes, you only 2 credits or only 1 card and 1 credit passed. Why not just play professional contacts?
Yeah.
Cool.
Lastly, I might take this one.
Most importantly, I would say.
Definitely not least. Donut to Gains. Fantastic flavour in that name. Just fantastic.
He sits in the park playing backgammon. I think that's the most important fact.
Yes. I think people can read the flavour text for themselves, but it's definitely worth the read if you get the chance. So it's 3 to install. It's a resource. It's a connection as well. The play cost of operations and events is increased by 1. And it's got 2 influence as a neutral card. So I'll just repeat that: 3 to play and 2 influence.
And he's unique.
And he's unique.
And he also hurts you and your opponent almost equally.
Yep.
I think that says as much as needs to be said.
Yeah. So, are you going to make those 3 back in terms of value over the game? Probably not.
Probably not. Are you going to make the 3 back in addition to the resources you spent to play the card, in addition to the influence you spent to play the card, in addition to the fact that you had to put the card in your deck, draw it, and the fact that it loses so much value as the game goes on.
And the fact that you're either not playing Shore Gamble and any other event, which is one of the most powerful card types for runners, or you're playing them for a premium and losing money.
I do want to point out one positive thing about it, though, is that it makes green level clearance a dead card.
A dead card.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a good note for us to finish on.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thanks guys. We'll probably be back maybe next time when there's some more interesting stuff to go through. Thanks for watching from everyone here in Melbourne. Thanks for watching.
Thanks.